Hello and welcome back to another edition of Chill with Kaiju Kim. I'm Kaiju Kim. Hope you're all doing well on this lovely afternoon, evening, whatever time it is for you. Have you pre-ordered your copy of Space Monster Wangmawi yet? It's available now on the SRS Cinema store. Set to be released late January 2023. Link is down below in the description if you want to get in on that. And tonight we'll be talking with someone who can be heard giving an audio commentary on said Blu-ray, along with I'm gonna butcher this, Seung Hoon Jung. Yeah, there we go. On Twitter, he is known as DeathGingerPunk. But ladies and gentlemen, please welcome kaiju historian and author John Goodrich.
Hello. Thanks very much for that intro.
You're very welcome. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. I'm very excited to be here.
Awesome. So before we get rolling, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm a nerd. I'm a writer, and I love kaiju movies. So I'm trying to combine all of those loves and into one big thing. And it's not happened yet, but I think watching kaiju films has influenced my writing, so there is that.
There is that. Yeah, kaiju will do that for you if you watch it enough. If you watch it long enough. All right, see who we have in the chat. We got Donald Goley Jr. What's up? Thanks for stopping by,
Hello.
good sir. Hello. Welcome. All right, so before we get into our main topic, you've seen the show before, right?
I have.
You have, so you know that I like to ask my guests 3 questions to get the conversation rolling, and those 3 questions are: how did you get into Godzilla? What's your favorite Godzilla movie? And what is your favorite non-Godzilla kaiju movie?
I got into Godzilla via the 4 o'clock movie. I would come home from school, and then I would sit down in front of the television, and sometimes there would be an interesting film, and sometimes there would not on the 4 o'clock movie. I remember seeing, and I don't know which one I saw first, King Kong versus Godzilla, and I definitely also remember seeing Godzilla versus the Smog Monster. And each of those just blew me away because they were so amazing, and there's all this stuff happening on screen, and they're knocking down buildings, and Godzilla is there, and he's wrecking stuff, and it's awesome. It is so cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Fortunately, my elementary school had a collection of these orange books, and I don't remember who published them, but they were like, there was a book on King Kong, and there was a book on Frankenstein, and it was all about, the monsters and that. And there was one on Godzilla, and I just took that one out for weeks and weeks, and it was great. A lot of the information was taken from, I think, Famous Monsters of Filmland, so it had that myth about there being 2 endings to King Kong versus Godzilla, which I believed for decades after that. But
I think everyone believed that. I believed it at first.
Sure. And so, all that sort of combined to make me a fan.
Yes. Favorite Godzilla movie?
Favorite Godzilla movie, I mean, excluding 1954 original, because I think that's everybody's actual favorite Godzilla film. But I love Godzilla Mothra King Ghidorah. That is just an amazing film, and Godzilla is super beastly and wrecks everything.
Absolutely everything. He is brutal in that movie.
He really is, and it's well shot. I like the way that in most of the fights there's a reversal, and then there's another reversal, so it keeps things fresh and interesting.
Indeed. And your favorite non-Godzilla kaiju movie?
Favorite non-Godzilla kaiju film? I'm gonna say Pacific Rim.
Interesting.
I don't know if anybody has said that on your show before,
I,
but
I feel like at least one person has. I don't remember.
okay. I like the themes of togetherness. I like the diversity of the kaiju designs themselves. They're neat, and yet you can see the central principle to most of them. So that's just neat, and I love the soundtrack. Really gets my blood going. So yeah, that was a huge amount of fun. Really enjoyed Pacific Rim.
Awesome. It is a fun movie. I will say that. It's a good movie. Alrighty. Ooh, we got some more people in the chat. We got Golden Pig Studios. Hello, hello. And Autistic Lizard Productions. What's up, Brendan? Hello. And Adrian
Hello,
Settle.
hello.
What's up?
Hey,
Welcome, welcome, everyone. Thanks for stopping by. Alrighty, so let's get right into our main topic, which is the movie Space Monster Wangmawi. So you must message me on Twitter to asking to come on the show, which, by the way, anyone watching is free to do that. If you have something cool or interesting to talk about and want to come on the show, hit me up. We'll talk. Anyway, so what made you want to talk about this film and how did you discover it?
I'm in the process of putting together possibly a book, possibly a web project that sort of details all of the kaiju films that have ever been made. I've got about 130 of them on the list. And I've come across, of course, the films that are no longer extant. Gogol from India. The early King Kong films in Japan. King Kong Comes to Japan. I want to see those. And in the middle of those is you hear about this movie Space Monster Wangmawi, which when I started was also thought lost, but 5-10 years ago, it was. I learned that there were copies of it, and they just weren't. No one had ever put it on home media, and then they started showing it at film, the Busan Film Festival. They showed Space Monster Wangmawi, and I went, "Oh my god, you can watch it! It is out there. It is real." And now I have no sway in kaiju fandom or professionalism whatsoever. So I kind of late at night as I lay awake, I would dear kaiju god, please make someone get Space Monster Wangmawi and release it. And
Your prayers were answered.
my prayers were answered. And then, because I have an existing relationship with SRS Cinema, he put out a call for extras for the Blu-ray, and I said, I'll do a commentary.
Very cool.
And he got back to me and said, yeah, you can do it. And I didn't want to be just another American telling you about a kaiju Korean film, because I don't know a heck of a lot about Korea. So I searched around on the net and found a Korean film professor living in America, Dr. Seung-Hoon Jeong, and he agreed to do the commentary with me. I was like, this is great. This is exactly what I wanted. So, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So this worked out, and I'm very pleased.
That sounds really cool. That sounds like a really cool experience. So, can you give us a little taste of like what the commentary is like, and maybe do you have any insight on like behind the scenes stuff, how the film came to be, all that fun stuff?
I've got a little bit of insight as to how the film came to be. It's not well known, and the people who were involved in making it, kind of, for many of them, it was a one-off. The writer never wrote another film. The director did a total of 5 films, and all of this ended in 1971 when the South Korean government became a little more repressive and they started taking control of the movie production. So Gwon-hyuk Jin made 5 movies, including Space Monster Wangmawi, and then faded from faded from filmic existence. I can't find out what happened to him, but I'm not a huge researcher. Um, so I mean, and there was, this came out just before Yongari, and there was some friction between the two productions because, and one of them, I think Yongari actually sued the producers of Space Monster Wangmawi because they thought they stole their ideas. But the main difference between the two is that Yongari A was filmed in color, B had Japanese suit builders and special effects artists come in and help make the film, whereas Space Monster Wangmawi is an entirely native Korean production. Everybody who was involved with it was Korean, and it's notably cheaper. It's all in black and white. The costume isn't lizardy. It's clearly a dude in a suit with a paper mache thing on his head. But the destruction scenes are really good. The director may have been the actors they're okay, but the special effects director Park Kwang Nam, who was hugely experienced, did a bunch of films, including the 1976 APE film, which is kind of crap, but the special effects look pretty good. So it's obviously an inexpensive film, but despite that, I enjoyed it. I've seen it a number of times now, and there's subtleties that Dr. Jung pointed out. At one point, Wangmawi walks up to this arch and then carefully steps over it, and that's an important piece of Korean cultural history.
Interesting. So, I mean, I guess you kind of already answered this a little bit, but without spoiling anything, like, how does this film compare to Japanese kaiju films of that era, and other like South Korean films like Yongari?
It is not, it is not a stellar example. These are people who are doing kaiju film for the first time. They don't know what they're doing. They're not. It's clearly some sort of passion project, but the script is not very strong, although it has some very interesting elements. Space Monster. The first thing we see is an alien spaceship coming around Earth and deciding that Korea is the perfect place to start our invasion, which is a wonderful trope that we all know from, Invasion of Astro Monster. But they do it. It's a little bit different in Space Monster Wangmawi because it's Korean and they've had a different experience with and I'm just going to say it, with war. And I think a lot of kaiju films are metaphorical or dealing with the wounds and the difficulties a country has experienced during a war. What else? The way Wangmawi is dealt with is unique in all of kaiju films, in all of the ones I've ever watched. No film has resolved itself the way this one has, and that is worth a great deal to me. And I'm not going to spoil it because you're going to go watch and go, what?
Oh, is there some over the top things that I should be prepared for?
No, it's not particularly over the top, but it's it's an idea that has never been used later, and that's never been used.
Okay.
So how the kaiju is defeated, different.
Okay, I like different. We like different around here. All right. Kasaibo F29. Hello, hello. Halloween or Christmas? Do you prefer Halloween or Christmas?
Oh, I like them both. Honestly, Halloween is for all my kooky weird friends, and Christmas is for receiving gifts from those kooky weird friends. So both of them have their their big advantages.
True, true.
As
Yeah,
long and the important thing is they don't impede on each other.
yes, very good. Yeah, I don't so much do the Halloween thing too much anymore. I lean a little more towards Christmas, but whatever. That's just me. Ooh, we got Enshima on the chat. Hello. Fourth wall comedy break defeats Wangmawi.
Well, I'm just gonna come out and say it. Maybe.
Okay. Maybe. We'll say maybe.
That's a good question. I mean,
oh boy. I'm looking forward to seeing what that's about.
yeah.
So I'm going to, one moment, just going to pull up some stills from the movie so everyone can see.
Ah, there he is.
There he is. There's our boy. So, what are your thoughts on the kaiju design here?
The kaiju design is, well, it's not there to disguise the human in the suit. Godzilla is constructed so that you don't really see that there's a man in there as much as possible with the technology involved, which is, as a kid, I wondered why are Godzilla's thighs so enormous? That's to conceal the shape of the person inside. This does not. Wangmawi is clearly humanoid. It starts off like we see it initially. This is not a spoiler because it's very early in the film, but Wangmawi starts off human-sized, and then the aliens drop him onto Earth, and because of the pressure differential, it grows to huge size.
Interesting. Oh, Carl Matson asked, "Have you seen Pulgasari?" I actually have seen Pulgasari. But I was just thinking about that. Like when you said that Wangmawi starts off small, I was thinking about Pulgasari because he also starts off small at the beginning of the film.
Yes, I have. I've seen that. It's on YouTube, so it's, if you look for it, it's difficult to avoid. Yeah, weird, very strange film and very strange story behind it. So,
Oh yeah,
there's an
that
entire book
is quite the story.
devoted to that. Yes.
Oh dear, we can talk about that either later on tonight or save that for another stream.
We could totally save that for another stream, and I would be there for it.
Yes. All right. So back
Important piece of trivia: the building to the left of Wangmawi there, that is the Bank of Korea, which still stands.
Oh, interesting. So I don't know. To me, this guy, he kind of looks like, are you a Star Trek fan?
Yes.
He kind of looks like the Ferengi, right? Like his head.
Yep. The with the large ears. I will tell you this though. Quark has never squirted a plane down with stuff spurting from his head.
Yeah, that's another thing I wanted to touch on. Like, because when I was a kid, I used to refer to Quark as a butthead because he kind of looks like he has a butt for a head.
Sure. Yep.
Oh god, a couple more stills here. Let me find the. It looks like he's kind of like at first glance, it looks like he's flipping us off in this still right here.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, here's a shot.
There it is. Yeah. And it sprays these buildings, and you can see them sort of melting. So I'm wondering what exactly the effect was, and then everything bursts into flames. I'm like, ooh, there was a lot of napalm used in the Korean War, wasn't there?
Oh dear. Like, yeah, it's not like, I guess it's some sort of gas question mark.
Yeah, it's a little hard to say but it's a physical effect. It's not an optical effect. So there's clearly some sort of like hose going up his back, and someone's behind him pumping it out. But it's really, it's like It's really neat.
Yeah.
And the ears, my God, I forgot how large the ears are.
They're ginormous.
They are.
Oh my goodness. But yeah. Uh so let's talk a little bit more about the practical effects. What are your thoughts on the set designs? Go back one here.
The set designs are really one of the strengths of the film. This looks really good. This would not, in color, this would not have looked out of place in a Gamera or a Godzilla film. And that's, due to the experience of the special effects director. But here, here he is walking out of Seoul, and it looks good. There's a little bit of a bobble as far as I'm concerned, because the sound design when it smashes a building is kind of weak. But it looks good. Stuff tumbles down really well.
That's awesome. So I only the only clips that I saw came from the SRS trailer. So what are your thoughts on this? It's kind of a nitpick, but um the frame rate, the way it was shot, it kind of usually you would shoot a kaiju film at a higher frame rate and then slow it down to like really show off the mass of the kaiju, right?
Yep.
So with in here, what from what I saw in the trailer, it just kind of looks like it looks like a guy in a suit. I mean, obviously it is a guy in the suit, but like the speed in which he moves in some of these shots does kind of take me out of it a little bit because
Yep.
you can really tell. Do you agree with that or
Yeah, I agree with that. They did not film it fast to slow it down. Uh, I I wonder if they were aware of the technique, or if they had cameras that they couldn't adjust the speed, or if they're like, we only have X amount of film,
maybe
which
that's
is also a possibility.
yeah, maybe that's what it was. Yeah. I don't know much about South Korean filmmaking, but from what I have heard and read, their resources were very much limited, a lot much more so than Japan's resources.
Well, yeah, Japan was in the middle of an economic resurgence in 1967, whereas Korea, this was made after the Korean War, so about 17 years after that. It was still very much a third world country, and the the film industry was very much had been taken over the by the government, and they said what you could and could not make films of, and you had to emphasize these things. One of the things you'll find in common with this and Yongari is they both involve a married couple.
Hmm.
In Space Monster Wangmawi, the couple is going to get married tomorrow, and tomorrow, as it turns out, is the day the monster arrives on Earth.
Of course.
So yeah, there's lots of there's a lot of, it's not exactly the Jack Rose shouting match from Titanic, but there's a lot of them trying to get together and find each other. But he he's in the Air Force, so he has to fly against Wang Magui.
Of course. Yeah, and that actually is a good segue into the next question I was going to ask you. Like, how are the human characters? Are the actors any good? Are they cringy? Like, stuff like that.
There's okay, so there's the main characters who are the bride, which is An Hee. There's Major O, her fiance, and in the middle of all this smashing and crashing, they find a child named Squirrel. And
Squirrel.
Squirrel, he's a street kid, so he's very much not. Okay, he's not very much not, but he's not the typical Gamera Kenny of some kid. Um, this is a kid who is breaking into houses, stealing food, and and the three of them, sort of come together to form the main plot. But there are also chunks of the film that are taken up by comic relief. and comic relief can be very subjective. Let me say that.
Mhm.
There's a couple of guys who are, as it turns out, inveterate gamblers, and they're pointing out things like, I think he's gonna, $50 says he's gonna knock down that building next,
Mm.
and it goes on for a while. I'm like, yeah, that's
Yeah, it was funny at first, but then it's like, can we not with this?
you know,
And actually leads into this comment from our friend Edshima. I personally don't mind comedic kaiju films, but from what I understand, Wangmawi is too comical to put off regular kaiju fans, as SRS is making this film look more serious in the trailers.
it is generally speaking a more serious film. Definitely there's definitely building smashing, there's definitely ruin, there's definitely lots of people running here and there, um having had their lives destroyed, and they're pretty serious about a couple of these moments. um that said, there are separate sections, like where the seriousness stops. They do a 8-minute but seems longer comedy section, and then they move on with the more serious story. And the the transition is kind of jarring, but I find that I don't remember the comedy bits very much, and I do remember the stuff that I was enjoying, the bits with Wang Magui smashing things, uh, lighting stuff on fire, because who doesn't like watching stuff get lit on fire? With Squirrel and on He.
Can't get over that name, Squirrel.
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 Well,
Who names their
and
kid Squirrel?
as my Korean collaborator said, Squirrel is um, associated with, in Korean, it's associated with being clever and being quick, and that's what this kid is. He's clever and he's quick, and he's a tough little survivor.
Okay, so how does he compare to the Kennys of the Gamera films?
Generally speaking, Kennys are useless. The Kenny will be passive, and he's supposed to be there for the audience to sympathize with. So, like in the later films, Kenny tends to stand there and go get him, Gamera!" Um, Squirrel's a little more active in the plot. And he's unusual because there aren't a lot of people that are very active in the plot.
Awesome. So, tell me some more of your likes and dislikes of this film.
I really like the aliens, because they are 100% Flash Gordon aliens in a 100% Flash Gordon spaceship, and they're wearing the big bucket space helmets, and they're wearing the silver lame. They're wearing either silver lame or tinfoil, and they are, they descend, and the lieutenant asks the captain, "Won't the earthlings see us?" And the captain goes, "No, of course not. Our technology is far too advanced for them to detect us on their stupid earth radar." 2 scenes later, the military is sitting there going, "Hey, there's some 10,000-ton metal mass up on our atmosphere. What's that?" Like, oh, so aliens not nearly as smart as we thought they were. not smart as they thought they were. But it's not played for comedy. That is not played for comedy.
It
It's played
sounds like a comedy to
absolutely
me.
straight. But it's like, oh, there's something in our atmosphere. Like, ooh, oh, the monkeys have discovered this spaceship. Excellent.
I like this film already. Continue.
What else do I like about the movie? Yeah, I like Wang Magui itself. Um, you don't tend to get a lot of kaiju that are basically dudes wearing a wetsuit. But he's also, as it turns out, he has a little controller on his back.
Does he now?
He does, and you don't see it until like right around this it starts to get to the second half of the film, um, and well, there's a plot point for you. It was so difficult before I saw this film to actually confirm the existence of this thing. The only hint I ever had, because every description of this movie, even the Korean movie database, is wrong about something. But I saw someone had made a custom action figure and posted it online, and it's Wangmawi, and on the back there's this control device. I'm like, what, really? Nobody said anything about this.
So there's a Wangmawi action figure somewhere out there.
There is a single custom Wangmawi action figure guy made for himself.
We need to hunt this guy down. Tell him to mass produce.
Honestly, the Korean fandom for this film is fascinating. There is somebody, and I if you look up Space Monster Wangmawi, you will find a guy who has gone to all of the places that he can find from the trailer and the posters, and he's like, "Oh, this is where Wangmawi was," and that was like so very handy for me, because I'm like, I have never been to Seoul. I don't know anything about Seoul. And okay, so now I know that, I know what this arch is. I know what this building is. I can't trace his how he goes through Seoul, but I know a couple of the things he stomps near.
Interesting. So any more likes before you move on to your dislikes?
What else do I like about it? Yeah, I like the fact that it has a non-standard ending, and that the metaphor, once you understand it, is very clear. Wangmawi starts in Pangnam-jeom, goes to Korea, goes to Seoul, and then dies on the other side of a river. And Dr. Jeong says, okay, Panmunjom is where the ceasefire for the North and South Korean conflict was signed. It's also where Yongari appears for the first time. So there's clearly this fear in South Korea that something is going to emerge from Panmunjom, and metaphorically from the ceasefire, and come and destroy Seoul.
Yeah, that would be terrifying.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Seoul, during the Korean War, Seoul was leveled as it switched hands 4 times in less than 2 years. Street to street fighting, it was a mess. It was leveled. It was like Tokyo. So, like Godzilla, this is sort of exercising all of those fears and memories and the pain of that particular experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always like when films just kind of touch on real life events, at least a little bit. I don't want it to be like too grounded, because I like a little goofiness. So this
Yeah.
so this film kind of sounds like it might be right up my alley, because there's a hint of goofiness, but also some seriousness. But yeah, it's always good to see when a film like touches on real life, issues, just to make people more aware. All right. So if you were to rewrite anything about this film, what would it be?
Okay. I would really change a lot of the comedy scenes. I would make them shorter. The two guys are okay in small doses. And they both went on to become like enormous stars. One of them hosted like the Korean Song Awards for decades, and it was huge. And another one is one of these Korean actors that made 400 films in a 50-year career. So he was always on call, always being uh, always being the leading man. But the script, as they say, was not with them.
Mm.
What they're given is not terribly funny, and I would have liked a little more. I would have liked a little more budget, so we could have seen a little more military. We only see jets attacking. We never see tanks. We never see really don't see troops being deployed except to evacuate the citizens. So that's really what I would have liked. I would have liked slightly better sound design, so that it doesn't sound like when a building is smashed, someone just dropped a box of rocks.
Yeah, so the sound design kind of sucks. I think you were telling me that before we started.
Yeah, the sound design, like the sound design is not. It's not up to Gorgo. It's not up to any of the Godzilla films. But you know, that's all stuff. That's all stuff I can get over, mostly because I'm interested in kaiju films that people are taking seriously as they make them. Pulgasari is a completely insane film. All of the news is delivered by some weeping woman. every time every time something bad happens, a woman runs on screen and crying tells the hero this terrible thing has happened. It's a cliche of North Korean cinema, and it's called the Weeping Woman Telegraph.
I love
But
that.
they were serious about it. They were taking this seriously. So, and that shows. There are kaiju films that were made because the director thought that they could make some money on it, or because they're filling a hole in their production schedule, or they're making a mockbuster, if I to put a real fine point on it. And it shows in the scripts and in the performances that they don't care, that they're there to collect a paycheck and then go on to the next thing. Space Monster Wangmawi, I think, was a passion project by people who didn't have perhaps all of the skills they needed to make a good one, so they made an uneven one.
Hmm. So I'm going to ask you a hypothetical question. Yay, those are always fun, right? So let's say this was a Japanese production and you were the director. Who would you cast as the main characters?
I have always had this idea that if I was going to do a kaiju film in the 60s, I would cast Toshiro Mifune as both the main character and the guy in the suit, so that he would be raging against himself metaphorically, which I suppose sounds a little artsy fartsy, but
A little artsy
you know,
fartsy is okay here and there.
nobody has done that, and I think that would have been fascinating to have a guy, doing wow, to have a guy doing both himself and his enemy.
Interesting. We got a question from Enshima. Since you are familiar with Korean kaiju films, thoughts on Pulgasari's loose American remake, The Adventures of Galgameth, if you've seen it?
I have seen it. Wow, that was. If you haven't seen it, Adventures of Galgameth was basically, I think it's a Disney Channel film that was written by the director of Pulgasari, that is essentially a retelling of it, only instead of it, and it being once again a fantasy film, but instead of it being a crying on the little doll to make it come to life because of the sadness of everybody, it is an actual monster. That said, it has an amazing cast that, like, it's got the guy who did the voice for Invader Zim, and a bunch of other people who later became really big. what's his name? You're a Star Trek fan. Who's the guy that plays Saru? Doug Jones. Doug Jones
Yeah.
plays Pulgasari.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so it's like it's the production value is It's that early CG that is really not very good to 20 years later's eyes. But it's an inexpensive little movie about somebody who really, it's about friendship. You make friends, and your friends will eat everybody's sword, and everybody gets happy because there is no coup, uh, which is possibly the worst movie summary you've ever heard. But there we are.
Yeah, I mean, for off the top of your head, not too bad. Not too bad. I probably wouldn't have done much better. And we also have a follow-up question. Any other obscure or lost Korean kaiju that deserve more exposure or barely anyone knows about?
Are you ready to go down this rabbit hole? Because I have a rabbit hole for you.
Let's do it. Let's go down the rabbit hole.
Do you know who Shim Hyung Rae is?
I do not.
Shim Hyung Rae is the guy who made Reptilian and D Wars.
Okay.
So those are two Korean kaiju films that were respectively, each of them, the most expensive movie made in the country at the time. Now, he started off as an actor and created a character called Yong-gu, who is this adult-sized man-child. He's good-hearted, but he's dumb and he does silly things. And he was huge in 90s Korea. In 80s and 90s Korea, he was like John Wayne combined with Mel Gibson and Harrison Ford. Everybody loved his films. And he made one called Yong-gu and Princess Zuzu, which is occasionally marketed as Yongari 2, in which Yong-gu encounters a young dinosaur, makes friends with it, is ostracized by his enemies, is ostracized by everybody else in the village because he's weird, and then Yongari's mother stomps on Seoul to find her child, incidentally melting the face of melting several people's faces by shoving her face into a high-rise building and breathing fire on them.
Oh dear.
It will never be seen in America because they used music from Last of the Mohicans. So unless they replace all of the soundtrack, and for this section, which is Yongari's mother going into Seoul and stomping on buildings, we're never going to see it in America. However, you can see an untranslated 3-section part of it on YouTube. If you know anybody who knows Korean and is willing to translate it, I would love a transcript.
I don't think I have any Korean friends, but I'll see what I can do. All right. Anything else? What else you got? Other fun Korean kaiju films that
there's another Korean. There's a 1962 antecedent to Pulgasari called Bulgasari. Pulgasari is an actual Korean myth, the metal-eating monster. It's got a long trunk, like an elephant, which it doesn't have in Pulgasari. But the important thing is that it eats metal. And there was a 1962 film in which a martial artist is transformed into a Pulgasari, but we don't know if it's a giant version or not. And I would love to see that. I don't think it's going to happen.
Interesting. A lot of interesting unseen kaiju films out there in the world.
Korea has a surprising amount of kaiju in it.
Any other countries that have any obscure kaiju that you know about?
not that I can think of offhand. I mean, it tends to be Japan and America. Uh, India made one. Denmark made one. Britain made one. Kind of it that I can think of offhand. I'm sure I'm missing a bunch because I haven't, reviewed my giant list of kaiju movies recently. That was not what I was preparing for.
You didn't study. It's okay. It was
I did study. I just studied the wrong thing for this particular discussion.
That's okay. I didn't study either, and this is my show. Yeah. So yeah. Any final thoughts on Space Monster Wangmawi?
Oh, sorry. Kasaibo
Kasaibo
F-29.
F-29. Greece needs a kaiju movie.
Greece made a kaiju movie, 1999's Attack of the Giant Moussaka.
Ooh.
Which you can also find on YouTube in Greek with French subtitles.
I don't know Greek or French.
Right. Just it's an unusual film. It also involves aliens that come down and they use their embiggening ray on a piece of moussaka, which then runs around Athens destroying stuff. It is a fascinating, weird film.
That
Also on
like
YouTube.
Fun. Oh, that sounds like fun. I gotta check that out. I'll put it on my never-ending list of things I need to watch.
There you go. Yep, I'm here for you.
Yep.
Last thoughts. As I said, I love kaiju films, and I love any kaiju film that people have put effort into, because the effort really makes it gives it that spice, gives it that because you can see what they loved. They loved this movie, so they put a little homage in there for it, and so you can kind of start to discern their thought process, why they made this film, what that's all about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good time for everybody. All right, so that'll do it for our discussion on Space Monster Wangmawi. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, this was an
yeah.
Go ahead.
So before we head out, why don't you go plug your stuff, your work? Where can people find you and all your stuff?
Oh, okay. You can find me on Twitter at DeathGingerPunk, and you can find me on many other social media platforms. Plug in DeathGinger and you'll probably get me. My books are available from any great bookstore, but probably you'll have to order it online. John Goodrich, a special secret for all of you Kaiju Kim fans: any character who brings up Godzilla indirectly is a character you can trust. Everyone else is probably a jerk.
Amen.
My books are Dark Drafts, which is short stories, Hag, which is a ghost story, I Do Terrible Things, which is all about the violence, and Little Britches, which is about a 2-year-old hitman who keeps a pair of 45s in his diapers. If you're going to read one story about a murderous baby this year, make it Little Britches.
All right. Yeah, you heard it here, folks. Okay. Thank you again for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Well, this was fun. Thank you so much. And I would be happy to come back and talk about Pulgasari.
All right. Well, I'll put you down for 2023. Okay.
Excellent.
But until then, ladies and gentlemen, for you watching at home, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to hang out with me and my fantastic guest. Don't forget to like this video if you had a good time here today. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and be sure to tune in next Sunday for another edition of Chill with Kaiju Kim. Thanks for watching. See you next time.